It began with a single footprint, pressed gently into a sea of gray dust, untouched for billions of years. For the first time in history, a creature from Earth had left a mark on another world. That footprint, still perfectly preserved today, isn't just a symbol of exploration. It's a symbol of what humanity can do when it dares to look up, and refuses to look away. The moon landing wasn't simply an event, it was a reckoning with what it means to be human. It changed science, politics, technology, and even the way we see ourselves. But behind that single step was a story of risk, rivalry, and breathtaking audacity, one that almost ended in disaster more than once. In 1961, when John F. Kennedy declared that the United States would land a man on the moon before the decade was out, even NASA's own engineers thought it was impossible. The United States had only just managed to launch a man into space for 15 minutes. The moon was 240,000 miles away. The technology to do it didn't exist, not even on paper. Yet Kennedy's challenge came at a time when the world was locked in a cold, silent struggle for dominance, the space race. The Soviet Union had shocked the world by sending the first satellite, Sputnik, and then the first human, Yuri Gagarin, into orbit. To fall behind meant more than losing prestige. It meant losing control of the future. So NASA began building that future from scratch. Over 400,000 people, engineers, mathematicians, scientists, and factory workers, joined forces. The average age of those working in mission control was just 26. They were building something no one had ever built before. A spacecraft that could travel to another world, land, and return safely home. And from that colossal ambition came Project Apollo. Before Apollo 11 could ever reach the moon, there were tragedies. In 1967, during a routine test on the launch pad, Apollo 1 burst into flames. 3 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, were trapped inside the capsule. They died within seconds. It was a devastating setback. The fire revealed fatal design flaws and forced NASA to rebuild the spacecraft from the ground up. But it also forged something else, a determination to make sure their sacrifice meant something. By 1969, the Apollo missions had tested every piece of the plan, orbiting Earth, testing the lunar module in space, and even orbiting the moon itself. The final test, landing, would fall to 3 men, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. On July 16, 1969, the Saturn V rocket roared to life, the most powerful machine ever built by humans. It burned 15 tons of fuel every second. Millions of people watched as it lifted off, carrying the hopes of an entire planet. Inside, the astronauts sat atop what was essentially a controlled explosion, traveling faster than a rifle bullet. Four days later, they reached the moon. Collins remained in orbit aboard the command module, while Armstrong and Aldrin descended in the lunar module, Gorstar, Eagle. As they approached the surface, alarms began to blare. The onboard computer, with less processing power than a modern calculator, was overloaded. Then Armstrong saw something the radar hadn't predicted, a field of boulders. He took manual control, guiding the Eagle across the lunar landscape, searching for a safe spot to land. Fuel levels dropped rapidly. 90 seconds left, 60, 30.
Then, silence. Houston, Armstrong's voice came through, calm but triumphant. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
At that moment, 500 million people, 1 out of every 7 humans alive, were watching or listening. It was the largest shared experience in human history. A world divided by wars, politics, and ideologies stopped and looked up together. When Armstrong stepped down the ladder and said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," he wasn't just describing a physical act, he was capturing a truth that went far beyond the moon. Humanity had proven that its curiosity, its courage, and its imagination could break the boundaries of Earth itself. But behind the poetry were incredible details often forgotten. The moon's surface smelled like burnt gunpowder. The astronauts' boots were coated in a dust so fine it clung to everything. Their suits carried the faint scent of space back into the cabin, something no human had ever smelled before. Buzz Aldrin later described the view from the surface as magnificent desolation. There were no stars visible, only the Earth, glowing blue and white, suspended in the black sky. For the first time, humans could see their home as it truly was, small, fragile, and shared. That single image, Earthrise, would ignite the environmental movement back home. Suddenly, our planet seemed less like a place we owned, and more like a place we had to protect. But the journey back was no less perilous. When the lunar module blasted off from the surface, it had to reconnect perfectly with Collins in orbit, a rendezvous that could not fail. Then came re-entry, a fiery plunge through Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour. If the angle was off by even half a degree, they'd either burn up, or skip off the atmosphere and drift into the void forever. They didn't. On July 24, 1969, the capsule splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. The crew was safe. Humanity had walked on another world, and come home. The world erupted in celebration, but even amid the triumph, something else began to shift. The moon landing didn't just end the space race, it redefined it. The goal was no longer about flags and rivals, it was about possibility. Apollo's legacy rippled far beyond NASA. The technologies developed for the mission, microchips, telecommunications, navigation systems, would eventually give rise to the digital age itself. Every time you use GPS, satellite TV, or even your smartphone, you're holding a small piece of Apollo's heritage. And yet, perhaps the most profound change was philosophical. For the first time, humanity saw itself not as separate nations, but as one species on one planet. Tiny, united, and incredibly lucky to exist at all. Michael Collins, who never walked on the moon, later said, "I see the Earth as a fragile Christmas tree ornament, so small that you can put your thumb over it and hide it from view, and yet it's the only home we have." So remained. The Apollo missions continued for a few more years, bringing back rocks, data, and stories. But when Apollo 17 left the moon in 1972, it was the last time humans set foot there. Decades have passed, and still, those footprints remain untouched, silent witnesses to a moment when humanity dared to reach higher than ever before. The moon landing wasn't just about science or technology, it was about courage, the kind that pushes us to face the unknown. It reminded us that our greatest achievements are born not from certainty, but from the willingness to risk everything for discovery. And maybe that's the true legacy of Apollo, not just that we reached the moon, but that for one brief moment, we remembered how to dream together, because if we could do that, what else might we be capable of?